tell Kira, my poker face is about non-existent. Then again, I'm also very open about the fact that, like, guys, if you see me being scared, one of us is going to do something they don't like. So if someone pops up some kind of weird plan to kill something, they take one look at me like, oh, we might die if we make this plan go. I was like, yeah, that could be, yeah. But if it comes to my DM preparation for that, I'm very happy that I've read the Dungeon Master Guide, because there's a lot of stuff in there that helps with a lot of things that players come up with. The Dungeon Master Guide is the best tool a Dungeon Master can have, but something that is rarely read by Dungeon Masters.
Yeah.
Especially the new generation, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
There are, for example, madness effects. If they do something so batshit crazy, burning down a monastery with peaceful people because there might be a demon in the next 10 years. Player stuff. I will get the madness parts with it. And my players know that if I need to, I will plan a break just to get my books in order or quickly see if I can find something. I also have a few things in my Dungeon Master screen that will just help me get on the right page as soon as I need to be. But I'm very open about if they do something that I didn't expect. The first word is probably like, "Oh damn," and the second one is "awesome."
Yeah.
Because that also challenges me, and I do enjoy that a lot as a Dungeon Master. If I want the most generic heroes, then I'll just recreate Lord of the Rings and tell them to roll dice when I say so. Not to be disregarding the Lord of the Rings, of course, but you're working with people, and people have the most batshit ideas, especially when it's not their personal flesh that's on the line.
Yep.
And I love that part. And I'm also very happy that I can also show them that I am really happy, and at that moment, like, oh shit, because they know I enjoy that. I enjoy the hell out of it. Yeah,
that's... There's times where they're about to like completely turn everything sideways. Yeah. And you're just like, you know what? I have to make you roll for this, but I really want you to succeed because I want this to happen. Because
the rule of cool allows for a window of opportunity, and I really hope that you thought this through. Every action does have consequences, because usually the cooler the ideas are, the bigger the backfire will be. Yeah. The backlash will be immeasurable in some cases. So, guys, and I do warn them most of the time. Don't forget, if you do your Leroy Jenkins act, it could go well, it could go bad.
All right, the famous words. Well, you can certainly try.
Yes. Are you sure you want to do this?
Are you sure? Okay, yeah, exactly. So.
And I love playing with that, but if it comes to me at those times, I usually make sure to get my Dungeon Master screen open. Like, okay, do we need some ruling on this one, or is it something I can put the rule of cool in, or is my knowledge low enough to at least make some amends for this, of some possible role for this? Because that's also the fun part about 5th edition. It's very easy if it comes to what could happen now and how could this be. It's a lot easier than it was in previous editions. So I'm very happy that it also allows Dungeon Masters to have some fluent energy with the rules.
Yeah. I think I never played 4th edition, so I don't have any frame of reference there. But I know that there's people that absolutely despised it, but there's people that enjoyed it very much and still want to play it. And but I think everyone kind of has the same opinion of 3.5. And it seems, at least for what I can see, that there is a... well, I will never claim that 5th edition is perfect. It is not. There is no such thing as a perfect system. And I know that there's a lot of social issues that people have brought up with 5th edition, and that's fine. But that aside, just from the rule set, I have found that 5th edition kind of tamps down on the rules lawyering. Whereas in 3.5, because there were so many rules, it was easier for someone a player to be like, well, the rules say that I can do this, and it didn't allow the DM, without really being heavy-handed, it didn't allow the DM to say, well, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen, or I will allow this to happen because of just the being so bogged down in rules. Whereas 5th edition, and they even say it right in the beginning, these are essentially guidelines. If it doesn't work, throw it out.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot less heavy. It's more like have fun at your table and go on adventures together.
Yeah.
And that's a great approach. And if it comes to 4th edition, by the way, I've only played it twice. And I think that 4th edition was a wonderful game if you didn't name it Dungeons & Dragons.
Oh, I could see that. If you called it anything else.
I think that they got a lot of people angry because they were expecting 3.5 but better. Or maybe Pathfinder 2.
Yeah.
And they got an entirely different game with some things that were still sounding like the Dungeons & Dragons they knew, but a lot of things didn't. If they just rebranded it to, for example, Dragons and Dungeons.
Dragonlance.
Yeah, for example. I think that it would have been a very successful part because it was just a different game. Especially, do you also know the board games like Wrath of Ashardalon and stuff?
No.
That's a D&D board game, and just the boxes are worth their money just because you get at least 40 miniatures.
Oh wow! What's the game called?
It's the D&D board game, and they have, for example, Castle Ravenloft, Wrath of Ashardalon, and a few other ones. Total of 4 or 5 boxes now, if I'm correct. But that's a D&D game that you can also play solo. You don't need a dungeon.
Oh, that's very cool. I might have to look at that.
Yeah, it has tiles, and whenever you get to the end of a tile, you have to roll a new tile. You have to see if something happens. For example, enemies pop up, or
that's
a chasm
cool.
appears.
Oh, I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, and the fun part is, this looks, also with the powers and the leveling from their characters, it looks like 4th edition.
Mm-hmm.
But because it is not branded like D&D in the traditional sense, these games are awesome. And everyone likes them. And I think that was the mistake they made with 4th edition. Because I think it was, to the core, it was fun, it was a good game, but it wasn't the Dungeons & Dragons I knew.
Yeah, you had a certain expectation.
I think that a lot of people had an expectation that they couldn't get over.
Yeah.
And for a part, that's okay, because we got a very fine 5th edition because of it, but...
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I could see that. When I played, it was one of the newer, and I haven't played them in years, so I know I'm way far behind. But it was one of the Final Fantasy games, and it was one of the ones that it was basically real-time combat. You were running around, and I remember it was almost you had to play like 2-3 hours just to get out of the tutorial before you got out like into the real world. And I hated it. And I think part of it was because I had an expectation in my head of Final Fantasy, because I've been playing Final Fantasy since the very first game on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I had played all the way up through Final Fantasy VII. I played Final Fantasy VIII, but I just thought it was boring. But it was still a Final Fantasy game. And then you got to this one, and they drastically changed the gameplay. And I remember saying the exact same thing that you just said, where it was, if you had called this any other game, I probably would have really enjoyed it. But you called it Final Fantasy, and that for me has certain things. And these don't. It just doesn't have any of them.
I have that with all the recent Final Fantasy games, because I've played Final Fantasy 9, and I loved that game. I loved everything about it. And then I was, like, 10. That should be cool, right? And then they came with that live action combat, and I'm not a great gamer. My brother is. I usually call my little brother to help me with the boss, so I can progress with the story. And he did so splendidly, so nothing bad about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a real live action gamer. I can't do those combinations and those great button mashings. I'm not made for that. I like the stories, but the turn-based combat from Final Fantasy 9 gave me the opportunity to just do it tactically in my turns, and that was what I was good in. I've played Final Fantasy 9. I finished it 4 times. I loved every second of it. Never really lost. But 10, if it comes to the tutorial, I died so many times.
Yeah. I think that's the one also had the chains, right? Where you had you had to build chains for like the other people. Like you couldn't just throw a potion to someone. You had to it was like, oh, it was very, very frustrating. So I could see that
when you were used to something else.
Exactly.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of Final Fantasy. Well, Final Fantasy, the later series, as well as D&D 4th Edition. What is Speaking of story, what is a secret that your players have never uncovered? Like, without getting too deep into the lore, what is something? Because you remember you had said before that like there's stuff that you had planned and they never got to it, but you still have it in your notes. What is like something that you really wished that they could have gotten to that they never did, or something that as a DM they never knew? That whether it was like a massive improv that drastically changed the story, but you never told them. You know, is there like what's a big secret that your players never uncovered from you?
Well, I have to be careful now because I have the biggest thing that I'm working with at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have two groups in the same world, but they're separate from each other.
Right.
And they've both come in contact with a guy, and I love this part. I got the. They blame me that I didn't use enough dragons in a game called Dungeons & Dragons. They had Venom Fang and Lost Minds of Fandel. Like, yeah, if that's the only dragon, yeah, we could have taken that one. So what? Okay. But I use dragons like I did in 3.5,
mm-hmm.
and that means that dragons can easily be just somebody leading a military somewhere in their shapeshift form.
Right.
All of my dragons also have magic, like they did in Draconomicon in third and 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an NPC that they are in contact with that is secretly a golden dragon.
Oh.
And they've been in contact with that one for at least every level that they've took. And nobody even suspects him.
Oh, I like that.
For being one of the most strongest parties, because he's a great golden worm within my world of Faerun.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them really got onto his nerves as well. They really tried, like, he's an asshole and very fun. He's like, I'm just looking out for the world like I've done for thousands of eras.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a time, hopefully soon, that they will see him changing into this golden dragon.
Mm.
And I'm going to love every minute of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
one even tried to spar with him a while back to just really try to see if we could get him down. It was like he was a guard captain at this moment in time. It was like, I'm going to show the Lord what we're made of, how strong we are. And he was a level 4 paladin with his strongest smite, a critical hit the golden dragon, and the dragon just shrugged it off. Like, okay, next round. And he's like, oh damn, this guy's strong, but he never thought more of it. Just like, oh, he's a strong human.
Yeah, not.
So that's gonna be fun when he gets out of these golden scales, out of his human skin, and just like, I tried to hit a dragon at level 4 and lived. I'm gonna love that.
You get that T-shirt.
Yeah, but a lot of my NPCs are strong and powerful monsters. Could be dragons, could be fiends, demons, celestials.
Oh, I like it.
And those are hidden within my NPCs. Because I do like a very grounded game.
Mm-hmm.
Because, let's be honest, if there's a pit fiend somewhere, he's probably leading a country or something. Because these are awesomely powerful.
Yeah.
But just to give them those subtle layers of, let's do also some political stuff and how much can we do and get away with it. I love playing with that, and a lot of our players have not figured that out yet.
I like that. We had an NPC in the last game that showed up repeatedly, and I always just described him as an old man wearing kind of like very plain beggar clothes, and he was always feeding canaries. And he always had 7 canaries around him, and he was always feeding them. And he would have little conversations, and he would appear and disappear. And at no point did they really investigate, and they were like, oh, he's mysterious, and they knew all that stuff. And it wasn't, and eventually it was revealed in the end that they were kind of being guided a little bit by Bahamut the entire time.
Oh, damn.
Because they've always, in the lore of Forgotten Realms, Bahamut likes to walk around in the world as a poor beggar, and he always has his honor guard with him, so he polymorphs himself into a human, and his honor guard are 7 ancient golden dragons that polymorph into Canaries.
Awesome.
So that was a lot of fun to, or shapeshift, or whatever that is. So yeah, that's I like that though, because what you've done is you could build a really cool world filled with paranoia of like, oh crap, which one of these guys is a demon?
Yeah. In your case, one of them would be a god.
Or possibly, yeah. That was the only one, and he was very hands-off. I didn't want a lot of divine intervention, but I just liked the idea of there being someone. I had rules where it was from internally. It was like the gods cannot directly interfere. There's got to be a rule there. Otherwise, then what's the point, right?
Not that the edgelord rogue then stabs the poor beggar.
Yeah, and well, then that would have been fun.
I kill a canary. You what?
No, you didn't. The canary's gonna kill you.
Yes. How is it gonna kill me? Well, it drops this polymorph. What? Well, that's a fun thing though, because I must admit I keep gods out of my games as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I have my reason for that, but I'm curious. Why did you bring, for example, a guy like Bahamut to the material plane?
So in the original, in this campaign, I had this concept, because I remember, and he's not really dealt with that much in 5th edition. And man, why can I not remember that? There's it's one of the, shoot, what is his name? I can't remember his name now. It was like this mad god. That it was, so basically the Abyss was created strictly to keep him to keep him imprisoned. He was imprisoned by the other gods. I forget. And it's the the Temple of the Elemental Eye, I think, was like the original module back in 2nd edition. But he so he's like this. He's like the one. He was the one in Forgotten Realms. He's the one entity that, should he ever break free of his prison, it would unite all of the gods. Evil, doesn't matter their alignment, and it would probably even unite the 9 planes of hell as well, because this guy's only goal was the total annihilation of all of existence. And I was like, what? Can you ask for a better bad guy who wants nothing more than to make everything not be anymore? And so I said, it figures, okay, but if someone like that, like a great old one exists, there's probably cults that are dedicated to him. And maybe one's starting to get a little bit closer to cracking open his prison a little bit. And the gods can't interfere directly, but they could potentially have agents on the material plane that would stop this from happening. And I thought, well, Bahamut makes the most sense. And I just like the idea that he also likes to spend a lot of his time walking around the world. He's not. He's
like the Vikings would have.
Yeah.
Baldur and Odin were just here.
Yeah, exactly. I always like that concept of a deity that understood their role, and it wasn't necessarily to interfere, but it was to be there to guide, to illuminate, and the only way you can do that is to be amongst the people. So yeah, I always liked that concept, and I just thought it was kind of cool, and it was like little things here and there, but the campaign I'm running now has no gods, so it's we went the complete opposite direction with it. So yeah,
I'm a bit envious though, and even jealous. I've grown up with that group of friends, and in 3rd edition, there would be a time when you had the power to dethrone a god.
Yeah.
And I had players who were constantly trying to do so. So I just put my gods behind a veil, just to have them safe from these murder-hungering badasses from 3rd edition. And I still have that fear with me into 5th edition today. So I'm pretty envious that you could actually let them walk around, because there's only a tint of a small hint that my players could have that the gods were among men. They'd murder all.
Yeah.
Especially those players. I don't see them a lot anymore, but the original group, especially a few of them, they would go to town.
Yeah, but I think with the new edition, with 5th edition, it's been out for 12 years. With 5th edition, I mean, I look at that and I'm like, all right, so best case scenario is if you pick a fight and Bahamut decides not to get himself involved, you're now fighting 7 ancient gold dragons.
Fair.
You'd have to have a massive level 20 party to even begin to have a fighting chance with that.
Yeah,
because, I mean, I'm going to use power word death. Yeah, but they have a legendary action of just succeeding on a throw that they fail. So if I do their saving throw and they failed, they can just choose to succeed.
And then again, if you have 7 dragons and you kill 1,
yep.
Action economy will state that there are 6 others.
Yeah, exactly.
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, just that fight alone is a next to impossible fight to win. And I'm sure somewhere that there's stats for Bahamut, but I have to imagine that Bahamut would be insanely more powerful than all of those dragons combined. He doesn't need the bodyguards. They're an honor guard. So if he decided that he needed to defend himself, he would just will them out of existence. So it's not like the only entity I think Bahamut fears is Tiamat. So it was like, yeah, sure, I'll put him in there. What are you going to do? He's a god. You're not.
If I remember correctly, most of the gods in D&D 3rd edition at least were challenge rating 30 or 40 or something like that.
Yeah. And then it got to
go all bring to town.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then it got to a point where it was very possible for characters to be more powerful than gods. And that, I forget, it was one of the developers of the game. I forget who it was. And they from 1st edition, I think, and they had said, this doesn't make any sense. Why are the players more powerful than the gods? That doesn't make any sense at all. And or the characters. And so I think they decided to pare that back a bit, and they started playing around with how the gods were working. So so
then again, in my games, and maybe that's also something that came from my school friends back in 3rd edition. Especially, there were a few power builders among them, and I'm not per se a power builder, but I do know what works.
Yeah.
So if I have a party that's going full murder hobo or being level 17 and just tries to undermine a kingdom by assassinating the king in broad daylight and stuff, because they will, there's always somebody stronger or someone that can hunt you. And I'm very happy to at least keep the new players grounded a little bit more. Because they know, okay, Rick won't open a bag of Tarasques, but there will be somebody after us, somebody powerful. Could be a vengeful father, uncle of that king that you dethroned. Or maybe even some celestial aspect that was really rooting for that.
Right.
For that guy. So I always have a small... I even have one miniature, and that's something I modeled after a Final Fantasy game. And my players know if this girl hits the table, they're gonna lose.
Oh.
I've made one female warrior, Final Fantasy 9, Beatrix, that's also the main protagonist for a big part of the game. And I've been in love with her since I saw her in Final Fantasy 9. I love her character, I love her story, and she's awesome. And I've made a mini of her, and I've asked one of my friends, a very good painter, to paint her in the best quality he possibly could have with some art that I found.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if I put her in a small shrine at the back of my dungeon master table, and if I stand, she's within arm's reach. And my players know if I put her on the table, they've done fucked up. They did something that, or for example, was agreed upon that we wouldn't, for example, or something that went way out of bounds. Then she's coming up and she'll make some new friends out of your corpses. And all of my players know this and are terrified of that small miniature.
I like it. Yeah, there should be consequences. Yeah, that's really important. There has to be consequences for actions, for better, for worse.
Yeah, exactly. If they do something awesome, also have to reward them like that.
Well,
For example,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
sorry,
go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, I'm now in the storyline where they're just chasing after an evil that's coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing that without any help from the world. They're just chasing after this evil, so nobody really knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they're gonna beat this evil sometime, and we're like, okay, now we're level 10. And now what? Because their worth is... They couldn't even buy a boat in Dungeons & Dragons. They don't have enough wealth. They didn't build anything of that kind of magnitude. Also, they didn't connect with the world in any part.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very fun to reward these guys upon saving the world that nobody knew was in peril.
I like that.
And even if they're coming up, yeah, we killed the big guy that made the sky purple. It's like, and do you have proof?
Yeah. Prove it.
It was just a week here and then it was gone.
Yeah.
We had a few months popping up, but it all disappeared, so maybe nothing really happened. So I'm very, very interested in how my party is going to take it, that they won't get the... Yeah, they only know amongst themselves that they did this.
Yeah.
That's because they didn't really have interest in the lore, in the world, or they just tunnel vision. I have to kill the bad guy.
Yeah. So we do that. Yeah. Well, so talking about consequences actually leads into this next part. So we're getting towards the end here. And I always like to grab a question that I find floating around in the DM community. And this is one I saw yesterday. And it was on the DM Academy subreddit. And I don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember the username of the person who did it, or a person who posted it. But they were asking a question of how to deal with greedy players. So they have a game that they're running. And it sounds like they've been relatively generous with items that they've been giving out, but they have one player that whenever they encounter a chest, that player shouts over all of the other players to make sure that he gets to the chest first. So that way he can have the items, or his character can have the items. And and one thing he did mention was that the other players have mentioned that they are uncomfortable with this. They're not pleased that the one player is running rampant with running roughshod over everyone. But it sounds like they're not really also about confronting the player about this. So as a DM, how would you deal with that if you had a player at your table who was being greedy? And I don't want to put any reasons behind it because I don't know what the reasons are, what the motivation is. But if they're being greedy and jumping in and even saying, well, that's what my character would do, because that's usually the excuse.
The worst excuse.
Yeah, right. How would you deal with that as a DM if you had a player who was hoarding all of the stuff for everyone?
It could have. I'm very shocked for a part that a lot of these things that people are not liking about other players, that they don't really never dare to discuss it. Because you have to. So as a person, I would really put the group together like, guys, some people are not having fun. We have to do something about this. Else this game will just stop.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of ways as Dungeon Master how I could put this to a stop. Dismemberment, if you just didn't check it out right. We have the tools as Dungeon Masters. Even in Critical Role, somebody died because of being greedy.
Yeah.
And then offered another one soul for it, so that's even worse.
Yeah.
So as Dungeon Master, we have tools to just kill that character. It's the easiest thing we can do. Put it to rest out, ta-da. But then again, if that happens in my group, the most important part that I usually also emphasize in everything that I do is like, you guys have to fully trust each other. And also ask the rest in the group, for example in the bottle episode, why are you guys together? Why is this greedy bastard in your group? What does he bring to the table that you guys do like? Because sometimes it could really be that the person doesn't really know.
Right.
He's just used to doing the dungeon siege, run around in a dungeon, emptying all the chests so that at least nothing gets lost. I've also had a player in one of my groups, and he and I were at odds. I was a player in that group, and I really was ready to throw him through a window. Because he played D&D as he would, for example, in Assassin's Creed. He also used these examples. So when we came up to a few guards and he started stabbing them because he didn't get a discount in the shop.
Jesus.
I was like, what? And we're level 7 by then. We already played quite some time.
Yeah.
But this was our second time in the city and just went full, not even murder hobo, but just full anime protagonist.
Yeah.
And it was also, and then he got his ass whooped by the guards because he wasn't that strong, and D&D isn't a game where you can solo an entire army.
Yeah.
And he and I we headbutted at the table, and before the next game, I called him up. I was like, if we can't get this out of the air, I'm quitting this game. We have to talk about this. And in this case, he really didn't. He never experienced D&D other than that kind of playstyle. So for him, this was sort of like, oh wait, how can I do this? Oh wait, okay. Back to square one. And also with Dungeon Master, I just pulled him in by then. Okay, let's talk the next time how we want to play this game, what kind of world we're in, because you're gonna get your ass kicked again. And another time he copied my character because mine was efficient in combat, but we lost our entire party balance. So when we went to an easy fight, we got our ass whooped. So we were really like, okay, how do we want to play this game? And I think that's the most important part. And that's not something as a dungeon master per se, but simply as one of the guys on the table, around that table, in that story. And as we also said before in this podcast recording, it's perfectly possible that some guys don't fit all groups. Yeah. I also have groups where I've been in and like, guys, I'm very sorry. I love you guys, but this is not my kind of story. Yeah. I even have one of my best friends also DMing. He gave me a break after I was the DM for 4 years. And we came across that I know a lot of monsters. And he wasn't as comfortable with reskinning, reflavoring, and using all kinds of other books. So with the DM, we sat together for 2 evenings to work out how my character would deal with this information. So we made him a writer that wrote a lot of hero stories from other heroes, and he had to roll in a history check for everything that he, if I encountered a monster, if I knew anything, yes or no. Right. And it was up to me to just make sure that it didn't spoil anything for the other players. But we talked about that, we made an agreement about that, and the games are fun. Yeah. True. There are moments that are like, oh, I know this. My character wouldn't. Oh, I'm going to get my ass kicked. This is going to be fun. Yeah. Yeah. But then again, it's still a game. So even if my character would die, my character didn't die because I didn't know it's something was resistant to fire. No, my character died because being a hero is badass and dangerous. And that happens. And you have to also remind that story also to your players. If they die, if something happens, like, for example, this guy who gets to every chest, how do you want your hero to be remembered? What hero do you want to revisit at the end of the story? And that will be my approach. A very long and lengthy answer. Sorry about that. No, it's fine. No, I found that most of the questions kind of all have the same answer, right? It's talk to your players. Yeah. Right? And yeah, it's have fun, and it's okay to fail. There's no winning D&D, right? The only way you win is by having fun. And so I've had players that had their builds, and it wasn't necessarily a power gamer, but they built it, and so they had all these advantages because they never wanted to fail a roll. I also suspect that they were cheating on their rolls because we were playing remotely, because they somehow never rolled less than a 17. And it was like, that's suspicious. Yeah, it is. And it's like, that's also not fun, because the fun in this also comes from the failures. It's fun. Like, I'm wearing a t-shirt right now. It says, what does it say? You reach out to push the orc off the ledge. And then it's got a picture of a D20 with a 1. And it says, but instead, you lightly caress him on the back. He is uncomfortable. I love that shirt. As well. Oh yeah, it's great. And it's like, but that's to me is like, that's the essence of the game right there. It's, you try to do epic things, sometimes it doesn't happen, and when it fails,
that can be fun. It doesn't have to be funny, but it can be fun to have bad things happen, and then you have to deal with those consequences. So,
I also have a shirt that says, "Friends that slay together, stay together."
I like that.
I use that in every game that I have because I want the guys on my table to be one team.
Yes.
One unit. You go in together, you get out together. And that's the most important part in D&D, because if you play around with 4 lone wolves, you'll have the worst adventure ever. And I also follow the stories on Spotify and YouTube from All Things D&D, where they read out stories that people send in their Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of things that are just like, if some people just talk to each other, that could solve world peace.
Yes, absolutely.
And that the same goes for D&D.
Yep, absolutely.
In game and out.
So, what is one tip you have for a brand spanking new dungeon master? Someone who's about to run their first game, what is one tip you have for them?
I have a boring one and an exciting one. What do you want?
Give me both. Well, today we're going to make it a twofer.
Oh, perfect. The first is read the Dungeon Master Guide. For a lot of things that your players will throw at you, there are answers already written for you. Don't get any gray hairs over things that you're going to panic at the table. Just have that book nearby. And it's a boring one because you have to read like 200 pages. Sorry. But it has good art, so have fun. But the fun part of the advice, and that also comes to your world building, and that's a fun thing for Dungeon Masters in most cases. Know what is going on in the world around the players. In the world. What is happening? Who's living over what? What's over there? A goblin raiding a village doesn't always happen when a party just arrives. The party could also be late. Things are happening in your world. Give it a place, because that makes your job of telling a story easier.
Yep.
You come to a city and it's been ransacked. Now it's up to you guys to find out what happened. Those same goblins, you went over shopping, but if you were 3 days earlier, you would have gotten a very other encounter. Now it's up to you guys to slay the goblins in their lair. And that's perfect. Because just go ahead with your world building, make sure the world doesn't revolve around your players, and just follow them with a camera.
I really love that, about that metaphor you have of the cameras on them. So for this campaign I'm running now, I started a spreadsheet for myself. And at the end of every session, I've got the major factions, political, whatever, just the major things, the major players in the world that these folks might never interact with. And so in the first session, there's an assassination attempt on some potential heirs to the Emperor's throne. So that's obviously going to set in some world-changing events.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, right? On a political scale. So even though the players might never interact with that, at the end of every session, I have a column. I write down like the date of the game. I write down the date in the game so I can keep track of timing, because I'm terrible at that. And then what are the different moves that everyone else has made? Did these pirates start doing attacks on this coast? Did this, whatever? So that way, as they move along, if all of a sudden they move out to the coast, has it been ransacked for the last 6 months or not, But,
exactly. And also makes your job as Dungeon Master more fun.
Yeah.
Because a lot of DMs get tired just because their players are just doing their thing, and Dungeon Master there as a tool for their world. And in my experience, this helps you scale that possibility, because you're also making your world fun for yourself. You're gonna make NPCs that you're gonna fall in love with. I have one NPC, Eluvor is his name, and he's a potion brewer. And he's a warlock, and he talks to ghosts. And he grew up with these ghosts. He thinks they're fun. And he already has a laugh, and he's a very gentle guy. And whenever they come into a store, they see a big battle axe with an icy glimmer above the door. They're like, oh, he's a kind of warrior kind of guy. He's just a very thin guy. Hey. And he comes in, a very happy, joyful guy. He only has an axe for if he ever faces a goblin when he's getting out herbs. And he's just, he thinks the world is something that only puppies and butterflies are in. He doesn't there's no evil here. No, the goblins only don't want me to steal their herbs, so I can kind of understand that. And he's a very joyful guy, and I love that guy. So if they come to Neverwinter, he has a store over there with all kinds of potions. He's also the occasional quest giver.
Mm-hmm.
And if they go, we fought a dragon for this, nah.
Yeah.
And we'll just go on with his day. and that helps with everything that my players throw at me. Even the things like, guys, not again, or just when they're ransack a city, for example, because they have the opportunity to. It's like, damn it. But these things are my shining light in, even if my players do all kinds of stuff that I don't really like.
Yeah.
These are things that help.
So what is one tip you would have given your younger DM self, knowing what you know now?
Don't play that cleric, get your fighter or paladin instead. You like frontline characters. Don't use that cleric. I think that would be the most advice I would give my 13-year-old self, because if it comes to the rest of my gaming experience, I could have been here faster where I am at the moment, but I like my adventure thus far. So just another starting character would have been fine. And you have to experience what your preferences are as a player.
Mm-hmm.
I hate playing mages or ranged characters. I absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
I want to be in the brunt of battle, helping my allies. And I've played with 3 wizards now, and the only one that I liked was a Bladesinger that I was too ambitious with and died at 3rd level. But the other guys standing in the back shooting their fireballs or their grease or other combats of your utility spells, they're not my thing.
Yeah.
But you have to find that out for yourself, whatever works. But I think that my first character should not have been a cleric.
Yeah. That's we're pretty much at the end now. So where are places, if you would like people to follow you or find you or see the work that you're doing, where can folks find you out there?
I think the easiest way to find me is through my website, vechelfantasy.com. Or find me with Vechel Fantasy on Instagram. It also has a link tree for all other Discord links or whatever you want to join up on. Instagram is, I think, where you can view the most of my own adventures. And I have a Discord where you're always happy to just look for a group, show what you're working on. I'm working on a boat at the moment, so come craft. So that.
Awesome. Dude, Rick, man, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast.
Thank you for the invitation. I was surprised when I got the mail, and I've loved every part of it since. Every mail and this podcast. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks, dude.
This is awesome.
Well, that's it for this episode of Hidden Roles. Remember, players, if you're in my game or in
Rick's
game, and you listened to this podcast, your characters just might get
Goblin.
Yeah, that's a thing. We're the Dungeon Masters. We can make it a thing. Please make sure to give us a big old 5-star review on whatever platform you happen to be consuming this podcast on. Please follow the Hidden Roles podcast on Twitter at hidden_roles. And you can always give me, Brian Wiggins, a follow at the St. Brian on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.